Welcome to the Empathy Stories channel, where we share inspiring stories of compassion, resilience, and the power of love. Today, we follow the journey of Emily, a woman whose selfless actions saved a life and led to incredible change. Her rise from hardship to success will leave you moved and motivated. Stay tuned for this powerful story. The winter chill was sharp as Emily left the local hospital, her shift having stretched into the small hours of the morning. The pale streetlights flickered in the quiet night, casting long shadows across the empty roads. She was exhausted, her body aching from the long hours of tending to patients. The cold air cut through her thin coat as she walked, her hands trembling not only from the chill, but also from the fatigue that had been creeping up on her for months. But despite the weariness, Emily could not stop thinking about her family. At home, her father, a disabled war veteran, waited in his old chair, while her younger brother, James, worked tirelessly to secure a scholarship that might one day lift them all out of their difficult lives. Emily's small house, a humble haven tucked away from the busy city streets, felt like her only solace. It wasn't much, but it was home. She dreamt of a future where she could offer her father a better life and James the education he deserved. Every day, she worked tirelessly, but the road ahead was long and fraught with obstacles. As she walked the familiar street, her mind wandered to the life she was striving to build, the sacrifices she was making for her family's well-being. But suddenly, her thoughts were interrupted by a deafening screech of tires. Her heart lurched as a car, careening uncontrollably, spun out of control and crashed into a nearby tree with an earth-shattering explosion. Instinctively, Emily sprinted towards the wreck, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. Smoke billowed from the crumpled car, the stench of burning gasoline and metal overwhelming the air. As she neared the wreck, she saw a woman, her face contorted in fear and pain. Trapped inside, the woman, her leg pinned beneath the dashboard, was screaming for help, her voice hoarse and panicked. Without hesitation, Emily rushed to the car, ignoring the danger that lingered in the thickening smoke. She tried to open the door, but it was stuck. Her heart raced as the sound of hissing from the engine grew louder. The car could explode at any moment. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but Emily didn't flinch. She was used to being strong for others, to putting the needs of her family and her patients before her own. With a burst of strength, she yanked at the door once more. Finally, it creaked open, and the woman's trembling hand shot out, reaching for Emily. "Please, help me. I can't move," the woman cried, her voice breaking with pain. Emily knew she couldn't waste time. The car could explode at any second. She moved quickly, sliding her hand under the woman's injured leg, carefully lifting her out. Every moment felt like an eternity. The fire was growing closer, the intense heat threatening to burn them both alive. With each step, Emily's strength waned, but she pushed on, her only thought being the woman's safety. Just as they reached a safe distance, the car erupted in flames, the blast sending a wave of heat and debris in every direction. Emily instinctively threw herself over the woman, shielding her from the blast. The explosion sent searing pain through her arm, but she gritted her teeth and stayed silent, knowing that the woman's life depended on her. When Emily finally passed out from the pain and exhaustion, she had no idea how long she had been unconscious. When she awoke, the bright, sterile lights of the hospital greeted her. Her body ached, and her arm throbbed from the burn. But the most pressing concern was the woman she had saved. The memory of the flames, the heat, and the desperate cries still haunted her. A soft voice broke through her haze. "Emily? Emily, you saved my life. I don't know how to thank you." Emily's tired eyes fluttered open to see Grace Harper, the woman she had rescued, sitting beside her bed. The older woman's face was streaked with tears, but her gratitude was evident. Emily, still weak, tried to smile. "I just did what anyone would have done," she whispered, her voice hoarse. But Grace wasn't having it. "No," she insisted. "Not anyone would have risked their life for me. I owe you everything." Despite the tears welling in her eyes, Emily's thoughts wandered to the missed opportunity she had left behind. I had an interview, she said quietly. It was my chance to work at a better hospital, to finally get ahead. Her gaze fell to the bandage wrapped around her arm. The reality of her sacrifice hitting her hard. Grace, sensing Emily's regret, looked down at her hands, guilt washing over her. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I never meant for this to happen. You missed your chance because of me. Emily shook her head, her smile faint but genuine. I don't regret it. It's just life is hard sometimes. The next morning, after being discharged from the hospital, Emily returned home. The streets were quieter now, and the weight of the world seemed heavier on her shoulders. When she entered her small house, she found her father waiting for her, a look of concern on his face. His eyes fell on her bandaged arm, and his worry deepened. I'm fine, Dad, Emily said, though her smile felt strained. Just a little accident. Her younger brother, James, burst into the room. Sis, what happened to your arm? Is it serious? It's nothing, she assured him, her voice laced with exhaustion. I'm just tired. But inside, she couldn't shake the feeling of loss. The opportunity she had missed, the chance to leave behind her difficult life, seemed to haunt her. How could she keep going like this? Every day felt like a struggle, but she carried on, just as she always had, for her family, for the life she hoped to give them. That week, a knock at the door surprised her. Standing outside was a police officer, his demeanor professional yet warm. He thanked Emily for her bravery and asked for a statement about the accident. Emily, still trying to process everything, reluctantly agreed to speak with him. As the officer left, Emily's father, Michael, turned to her with a mixture of pride and concern. Why didn't you tell me what happened? He asked softly. Emily looked at him, her heart heavy. I just did the right thing, she replied quietly. I didn't need anything in return. But Michael could see the weight of the burden she carried. He knew that his daughter was struggling more than she let on. And that night, as Emily sat alone in her room, the feeling of loss and uncertainty lingered. She had done the right thing. No one could question that, but in the quiet of the night, she couldn't help but wonder if her sacrifices would ever lead to the better life she had dreamed of. Days passed in a blur for Emily. Her routine remained unchanged. Her life still grounded in the same humble house with her father, Michael, and her younger brother, James. The emotional toll of the accident weighed heavily on her. But it was the missed opportunity, the interview at the prestigious hospital she had lost, that gnawed at her every waking moment. Her dreams of a better future for her family seemed even more distant now. But despite everything, she pushed forward, determined to make the most of what she had. Meanwhile, Daniel Ruiz, the son of the woman she had saved, was consumed by thoughts of Emily. Grace, his mother, had described her in glowing terms. But the truth was that Daniel had witnessed her bravery firsthand, and it had left a lasting impression on him. He couldn't shake the image of her, a small figure standing in the middle of a car crash, selflessly risking her life to save a stranger. He admired her strength, her dedication, and the humility that seemed to define everything about her. But what stood out to him the most was the quiet, almost invisible sacrifice she had made for her family. A sacrifice he could understand on a deeply personal level. His thoughts drifted back to the days following the accident. His mother had insisted that Emily didn't want any gratitude or recognition. But Daniel was not one to ignore such an extraordinary act. He knew he had to find a way to express his appreciation. But he also understood that Emily's pride would make it difficult for her to accept help directly. So, he decided to approach her in a way that might bypass her pride, offering his help without making her feel indebted. It was a rainy afternoon when Daniel decided to visit the small hospital where Emily worked. He had heard about her tireless dedication to her patients, her hard work, and her sacrifices. He had done his research. Emily had no idea that he had been quietly observing her life since the accident. He wanted to learn more about the woman who had saved his mother and whose life, as he had learned, was far more difficult than anyone could imagine. As Daniel stepped into the hospital, he watched from a distance as Emily attended to her patients with quiet confidence. She moved through the wards with the grace of someone who had spent years honing her skills. her every action infused with compassion. He was impressed. He couldn't deny it any longer. He wanted to do something for her, to offer her a chance to break free from the constant grind of her life. When Emily finished her shift, Daniel approached her, his steps deliberate. He had planned this moment carefully, knowing that he had to be gentle with her. He didn't want to push her away, but he also didn't want her to feel as though he was doing this out of pity. "Emily," Daniel said softly, his voice steady yet warm. "I wanted to thank you again for saving my mother's life. You've done something for us that words can hardly express." Emily, surprised by his sudden appearance, looked up at him with guarded eyes. "It was nothing," she replied quickly, her voice tinged with discomfort. "I just did what anyone would have done." Daniel shook his head. "No, Emily, not anyone. You put yourself in danger without a second thought, and I think that deserves more than just a thank you." He paused, searching for the right words. "I know you're proud, and I know you don't want to accept help, but I believe you deserve more than the life you're living now. You've been selflessly caring for your family for so long. It's time for you to get the chance you deserve." Emily's gaze faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "I appreciate your words, but I don't need anything. My family is my responsibility, and I'll handle it on my own." Daniel's eyes softened. "I understand, but that doesn't mean you have to do it all by yourself. You're extraordinary, Emily. I've seen it, and I can help you in any way you need. Just let me offer you something." Emily turned away slightly, her face flushed with a mix of pride and embarrassment. "I don't want to be a burden to anyone," she said quietly. "Please, I'm fine. I don't need help." Daniel could sense the stubbornness in her voice, but he wasn't deterred. He knew this wouldn't be easy. Emily had a strong sense of pride, one that he could relate to, but it also meant she would never accept help unless she felt it was necessary. And he wasn't about to let her continue struggling without offering her a way out, even if she didn't want it. A few days later, Daniel found another way to approach the situation. He knew Emily had missed her chance to interview at a larger hospital due to the accident. He had connections, and he wasn't going to sit idly by while Emily's potential went unnoticed. So, using his influence, he arranged a meeting with the hospital's human resources department and set up another interview for Emily, without her knowing it was him behind it all. When Emily received the call, she was stunned. "We've reviewed your qualifications, and we'd like to offer you another opportunity for an interview," the representative from the hospital said. "We believe you'd be a great fit for our team." Emily was taken aback. She hadn't expected this, especially after what had happened. For a moment, she was speechless, but she couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this was the break she had been waiting for, the chance to build a better life for herself and her family. Meanwhile, Daniel was content to stay in the background, watching Emily's progress from afar. He knew this was just the beginning. Emily had so much more to offer, and he was determined to help her find a path that would allow her to grow without the burden of self-sacrifice weighing her down. But what Daniel didn't realize was that his admiration for Emily had started to evolve into something more. He was beginning to see her not just as a woman who had saved his mother's life, but as someone he truly respected and cared for. And as the days went by, he found himself thinking of her more and more, wondering what it would be like to know her beyond the act of gratitude and admiration. As for Emily, she was still trying to navigate the complexity of her own emotions. She was grateful for the support from Daniel and his family, but she couldn't shake the feeling that accepting help might mean admitting she couldn't do it all on her own. And that thought, for someone who had carried the weight of her family's struggles for so long, was harder to swallow than she would have liked to admit. As the days passed, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the back of her mind. She had agreed to the interview at the larger hospital, and yet, she couldn't completely shake her hesitations. The nagging thought that perhaps she didn't belong there, that she wasn't worthy of a life beyond her current struggles, weighed heavily on her heart. It wasn't that she lacked the qualifications or the drive. It was the belief she had internalized for so long, that sacrifices had to be made for others, that she had to give everything for her family without expecting anything in return. But despite her hesitation, Emily couldn't deny the excitement that had begun to stir within her. For the first time in years, She had been offered a chance to break free, to step into a world that promised more than just survival. And this time, she wasn't about to let the opportunity slip away. The interview day arrived, and Emily stepped into the prestigious hospital with a sense of determination that surprised even herself. The moment she walked through the doors, she was greeted with an air of professionalism and a sense of awe at the bustling, fast-paced environment. This wasn't like her small hospital. This place had resources, opportunities, and a sense of purpose that she had never experienced before. As she answered the questions, Emily felt a quiet confidence settle over her. She spoke about her years of experience, her passion for patient care, and the deep love she had for her work. She wasn't just a nurse. She was someone who truly cared, who saw each patient as more than a case, who connected with them in ways that went beyond the physical. She felt herself shining in a way that was new to her. And with each passing moment, the doubts in her mind began to dissipate. This was where she belonged. When the interview ended, the panelists exchanged glances and smiled warmly. "We're very impressed with your qualifications, Emily," the head of the panel said. "We'd be honored to have you on our team." Emily's heart leaped in her chest. She had done it. She had finally taken the step towards something bigger, something that would allow her to support her family without having to sacrifice her own dreams. When she left the interview room, she felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She was no longer just the selfless daughter and sister. She was a woman carving out her own future. The news of Emily's acceptance into the new hospital spread quickly. She shared the good news with her father, Michael, and her brother, James. The joy and pride in their faces were evident. And for a moment, it felt like the struggles of the past had been worth it. Emily had always been the one to support her family. But now, she was going to have the chance to pursue her own dreams. And that was a victory, not just for her, but for them all. As she began her new position at the hospital, Emily threw herself into her work with the same dedication that had always defined her. She was no longer just a nurse. She was someone with the potential to make a real difference, not just in her own life, but in the lives of countless others. Her compassion and empathy were her greatest strengths, and she was able to connect with her patients in ways that made them feel truly seen and cared for. It wasn't just about the medical care, it was about the human connection. One day, as she was working in the pediatric ward, a mother walked in with her sick child, a frail little boy named Damien. The mother's eyes were filled with worry as she clutched her son's hand, his pale face a stark contrast to her own. Emily immediately recognized that this family was struggling, not just with the boy's illness, but with the financial burden that came with the treatment costs. She could see it in the way the mother hesitated, almost afraid to ask for help. After examining Damien, Emily turned to the mother and spoke softly. "I'll do everything I can to help your son. We'll make sure he gets the treatment he needs." The mother's eyes welled with tears, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you. I don't know what we would do without help." But Emily didn't stop there. She knew that this was more than just offering kind words. This was an opportunity to make a tangible difference in the lives of those who couldn't afford the care they desperately needed. Without a second thought, she made the decision to cover a portion of the medical fees for the boy's treatment, ensuring that he would receive the care he needed without burdening his family any further. News of Emily's kindness spread quickly throughout the hospital. Her actions not only helped Damien get the medical attention he so desperately needed, but they also served as an inspiration to her colleagues. Emily had always lived by the principle that kindness mattered more than anything else. In that moment, she proved that her compassion could change the world around her. As she continued to build her career, Emily's story inspired others to look beyond their own circumstances and consider how they could make a difference in the lives of others. It wasn't just about medical expertise. It was about the heart behind the work, the genuine care for people that made all the difference. Emily's rise at the hospital didn't go unnoticed, and it wasn't long before she became a role model for her peers. But Emily's journey wasn't just about her career. It was about something much deeper. She had always been driven by a sense of responsibility, not just for herself, but for her family. Now, with her new job and the support of the hospital, She had the means to help them in ways she had never imagined. But what she didn't expect was the support she would receive from the very people she had tried so hard to help. Daniel, who had been quietly observing Emily's progress from a distance, couldn't help but feel drawn to her. He had always admired her strength. But now, seeing her in action, he was struck by the depth of her compassion and the way she effortlessly put others before herself. Emily wasn't just a woman who had saved his mother. She was someone who had transformed her own life, despite the countless obstacles in her path. It was clear to Daniel that Emily's impact was only just beginning, and though she may not have realized it yet, he was starting to see her not only as a remarkable woman, but also as someone he wanted to know on a deeper level. Thank you for watching this heartfelt journey of Emily's courage, perseverance, and growth. Her story reminds us all that kindness and hard work can change not only our own lives, but also the lives of others. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring content. See you in the next video.